Hello and welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Daniel chapter 4 and 5. Now, if you are a historian or you just enjoy a good story, you'll see that the first 6 chapters of the book of Daniel are absolutely riveting. Now, chapter 4 is quite unique in that it's an autobiographical document that is sent out by Nebuchadnezzar to his vast kingdom, admitting his pride, his fall from grace, his insanity, and then God's restoration and his worship of God. So some take this as proof that he had this spiritual conversion, the secular leader, and he ended out his days as a believer in God. The time of writing is about 30 years after he witnessed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire. But although he had seen evidence of God, he still took credit for his power. I mean, he also took comfort from the fact that he had been told by Daniel that his kingdom of gold would be secure and be followed by another kingdom. But in this chapter, God gives him a dream, wakes him up in the middle of the night, and he terrifies him with his dream of this massive tree. And a word coming from heaven saying the tree would be chopped down. Daniel gives the explanation that that tree is you and that God's asking you to repent. I see the kindness of God here. It gives him a whole year to repent, but Nebuchadnezzar doesn't repent, struts around in his arrogance, and we've seen before God doesn't tolerate that. And it happened. He gets cast into a field, looks like an animal, eats like an animal, unkempt, and then after 7 years, God restores his sanity and restores his kingdom, which is also miraculous. You would think in those days someone else would just take the throne and leave. You know, when I read this text, I see the great doctrine of the sovereignty of God. God raises up leaders, he disposes of, but I also see the doctrine of human responsibility. We're called to repent, called to humble ourselves. And these two are not in conflict. They go hand in hand. God will do what he pleases, and he calls us to respond to him. That's chapter 4. Now, chapter 5 takes us to the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar. And there'd been a succession of other leaders that had been in the place between Nebuchadnezzar and him. But basically it puts us now many years on. In fact, some say that if Daniel was taken off into captivity when he was 16 years old, and that was 605 BC, and Babylon fell to the Medes and the Persians, which is this chapter, in 539 BC, Daniel was probably like 82 years old at the writing of these events. Anyway, this is the story. Belshazzar is king. He's in his Babylonian palace. The Medes and the Persians are camped outside, ready to attack. But they're sitting secure because they know they have 20 years of provision. The walls are massive. It's an impregnable fortress. And so can you believe what he's doing? He's having a party. His enemies, the Medes and the Persians, are around him, and he's having a party. He's getting drunk. There are women, there are concubines. He's worshiping the god of money. He's so arrogant. He's calling the artifacts from the Israeli temple to be brought before him. And in the midst of this, a hand appears and begins to write on a wall. And it terrifies all the guests. I think they've had too much to drink. Anyway, they can't read it. It said, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Now, being a Babylonian, he didn't know what that meant. So he called in his wise men. They didn't understand or couldn't interpret it. And so the queen said, just bring in Daniel. So the old guy comes in and he basically says, your days have been counted, found wanting. The Medes and the Persians are coming and they're going to take you out. Do you think that Belshazzar even bothered to give it any attention? He carried on partying. But this is what happened. History tells us the Medes and the Persians under Darius the Mede diverted the Euphrates, which was flowing into the city. The riverbed then created an opening that the Medes and the Persians were able to come in, and they took out the city. And so this is what Nebuchadnezzar's dream was busy being interpreted, the golden head now was being replaced by the shoulders and arms of silver, the Medes and the Persians. So who was this Darius the Mede? Not to be confused with Darius the First, who encouraged the Israelites to go back and rebuild Jerusalem. No. This guy was somebody else. Most theologians, historians believe he to be Gabaru, the administrator of the Babylonian province at the time. Once again, we see the sovereign will of God taking shape in the midst of kings masquerading, pretending that they're in charge.